Hello， 大家好，欢迎来到 Watersound Studio， 我是 Kurt。今天我们来到了位于美国 Edgewater, New Jersey 的世界顶级 Mastering Studio Sterling Sound， 来带大家看一看。Let's get it. We're here at Sterling Sound with Mastering Engineer Chris Gehringer. Can you say hi to the viewers in China?
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Sterling Sound.
So this room is your personal mastering room, correct?
Yes, I basically live in this room.
How long have you been in this location?
We've been here since 2018, so I've been in this room for 6 years, 7 years.
This is a great build from designs from
Northward Acoustics.
Northworks, yes.
Yeah.
I can imagine this is a dream to work in.
Yeah, these rooms, these are the best sounding rooms I've ever worked in. And we've had, I've been in a lot of studios for almost 40 years, and this room to me is possibly the best room I've ever heard.
So you mainly work on ATC speakers.
Yes.
So all of your rooms have ATCs, right?
Yes. Part of the design when we built this place was that all the rooms are similar. So we put the same equipment in, everything, and then each engineer can tweak the speakers as they want them. But basically, any other engineer, if anything happens with one room, an engineer from another room could come in and work and not have to worry about the room sounding different speakers and different amps.
So I see a lot of other ATCs, freestanding ATCs around the room. So are you doing a lot of Dolby Atmos mastering at the moment?
Yes, this room, I don't do the Atmos. I have somebody who comes in here after I leave at night, and he does all the Atmos mixing and mastering in here. And all the other rooms are just two main front speakers. This room is just full of speakers. There's speakers in the ceiling and all around us.
Have you always been using ATC speakers, or were you using different speakers before this build?
I was using different speakers before this. For a while, I used Dynaudio M3s. Then I used B&W Nautilus 801s, and I've always wanted ATCs, but never had the right place for it. But
I've seen you in videos with BMW speakers.
Yeah, the B&Ws I had for a very long time, but this room really focuses the audio, and the ATCs are perfect for it. When Thomas, who the designer at Northwood, when he designs these rooms, he designs them with custom ATCs in mind, so they really sound the best in the room.
I've heard several systems with flush-mounted ATCs. I think they really perform well, like flush-mounted and designed for with the room, right?
Yeah, they're just great speakers. I mean, even the smaller ones on top of the console.
Hundreds or 50s?
Yeah, they just sound so good.
Are these 100, 100 or 50?
I think they're 50s.
50s,
I forget.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't like memorize speaker stuff. I'm about vibe, not
Gotcha. So when you work on stereo materials, so mainly are these 110s ATCs?
Yeah,
okay.
with
the subs. Okay.
Yeah.
I've watched your Mix with the Masters class. So from what I understand, you predominantly work in the digital domain these days, right?
In the box, yeah.
But I still see some analog.
I have some. I have a new
here
Terry EQ, which I love.
Yeah, I've never seen that before.
It's pretty cool. It has no numbers on it. There's a cheat sheet that comes with it that tells you what the values are. But it's really, like I said, I like to work in a vibe mode, not a technical mode, and that really fits the vibe, as you can see. To me, it's all about the sound and the feeling, and that has like a lot of color to it. It's cool that it's in colored.
What is this piece in the middle? This one here?
That's a Baxendall EQ that
cool.
One of our techs here, Phil, designed.
Wow. And Dangerous Music compressor.
Yeah, Chris Muth worked here for a long time. We use a lot of dangerous stuff here. The curve bender. I was in a mood for a while using that, but basically I'm all in the box now except for the Terry. The Terry is nice to just run some stuff through and put some color on it.
Great. What converters do you use these days?
Well, since I'm in the box, I'm just using the output ones, but Prism Dreams.
Prism Dreams, okay.
Yeah.
Does every room have the same converters, or does each engineer?
Everybody has the same output converters. I'm pretty sure the DA2s, but Greg Calby uses a different input. He has a couple different ones that he uses. Greg Calby's all out of the box. He's a lot of analog gear. Randy Merrill uses some outboard gear every now and then. He uses a pretty good amount. And I think he has two different converters too. But
So when you were outside of the box, do you What was your A to D? Before?
The
prisms?
prism.
Okay,
Yeah, I
cool.
think the prism is the flattest, most natural sounding
Nice.
converter.
Do you clip with them?
Sometimes back then I used to clip a little, and then I got into the mode of not clipping and then putting a digital limiter on it or a clipper at the top.
It's a different sound, right?
Yeah, it's totally different sound. You have to, like, again, it's vibe. Like, like people always ask me, like, what's your chain and what do you use? And it depends. Every song is different. Everything I work on is different. So everything needs a different approach.
Yeah, and let's see the centerpiece of the studio, Chris Muth, right?
Yeah. That's an analog console.
Analog console.
It doesn't get a lot. There's another. That's just a monitor thing. There's an
Monitor
analog
section,
console
this
under there
mastering console.
for the analog gear. One of the guys here is going to try and build some new stuff. That more modern with digital inputs and things like that, so we can switch analog gear digitally into the chain. We're working on that right now. It's pretty cool. It's a great idea. The analog stuff is kind of a pain because you have to patch it or you have to run it through a whole system and then, in and out. If we could just select it and throw it right into the chain, it's kind of nice.
So it's like a console and a patch bay built together, right?
Yeah.
So you control your stereo monitoring system using the console, right?
Yes.
So
pretty much a big volume knob that.
Cool. So the Grace is mainly for the Dolby Atmos stuff. Right?
Yes, that Grace is strictly for the Dolby Atmos.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you still use the analog VU meters?
I'm old, so I use the VU meters.
And
feel
also
like
the scope?
The scope I use to look at distortion and kind of see imaging so I can match stuff when I'm putting together an album. The VU meters, though, are kind of like my go-to level. Like everything LUFS, everybody's very into LUFS today, and it's something that doesn't really work when it comes to different genres of music. Rap music has much lower LUFS registered, but their bass is much higher and it appears just as loud. Pop music or metal can be very high LUFS and not a lot of apparent level. So I use those more for apparent level.
So the VU meter is still it's connected to the output of the system,
yes.
right?
Yeah, the output of this.
So what is zero calibrated to?
-9. Because of the level wars today. We have to be prepared for those. So yeah, -9's kind of high, but
But it makes sense in today's industry.
In today's world, everything is screaming loud.
So Chris, how long have you been mastering?
I've been mastering for almost 40 years now. Wow. I think next month it'll be 40 years.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Early congratulations for 40-year anniversary. How did you get into mastering?
I got into mastering. I started in live sound. I was, friends with a whole bunch of musicians that played out a lot. I tried to be in bands, but I'm not that good of a musician. Bass was my instrument back then. So I started doing sound for my friends. And it went from doing sound for my friends' bands to doing sound for a couple other bands. And then I was like, I think I'm going to try this. And I went to a 1-year audio school in New York that was the Institute of Audio Research. It's no longer around. I didn't even graduate, but I got out and I started applying at studios. And I got into a recording studio. I worked at Green Street Recording in the early 80s. And then I kind of wasn't sure if I wanted to do music, and then I started working at a mastering studio because it was close to where I lived, and I fell in love with mastering. It's really what I like about, working in a studio is shaping.
When did you join Sterling?
I joined Sterling in 2000.
2000. Yeah. Wow, it's 23 years.
23 years, yeah.
I looked on Sterling's website. I saw some of your earlier works were mainly hip-hop oriented.
Yes.
Correct. I saw you. I didn't know this before. You mastered Wu-Tang Clan's 36 Chamber. Oh wow! Yeah. You have that tattooed. Oh my god! That's one of my earliest hip hop inspirations.
Yeah, that record has been really good to me. Like really good. When I did that, I just thought it was the coolest album because we were cutting these kung fu skits into the album and. The album was sequenced really crazy, yeah. And
that was done in mastering, not in mixing.
It was done. A lot of it was done in mixing, but then they had to do stuff in mastering too. Back then, it was kind of a free for all putting an album together,
especially in the hip hop world, right?
Yeah, that was at the very beginning of, digital workstations.
Okay, so
So
was that album done in mainly was still analog, right?
yeah, for sure. It was analog tapes. Actually, I think it came in as a DAT, and then as the singles came out, they remixed everything and did it to half-inch tape.
Oh wow, most people around my age wouldn't know what that is. It's digital audio tape, right?
Yes, it's a mini digital video cassette.
So the only people who are still using that, at least in China, are audiophiles and collectors. So
Yeah.
no music
I
people
don't
are
think
using
anybody's
that.
using a DAT here.
The mastering is from tape to vinyl, right?
Yes.
Are you cutting vinyls these days?
We actually cut quite a bit of vinyl here. We have Sterling Sound Edgewater, which is this facility, and then we have Sterling Sound Nashville. Ted Jensen works down there, Ryan Smith, Adam Grover, Joe Nino is one of the vinyl guys. Ryan Smith and Joe Nino Hearns cut all our vinyl down there. We have it down there primarily because a lot of the pressing plants and electroplating facilities are in Nashville. So it's better for the vinyl to be cut and electroplated right away as soon as possible.
The demand is growing, right?
Oh yeah, the last couple of years our vinyl production has gone up like by a lot. It's very popular now to release an album on vinyl.
I think a lot of people don't quite understand about vinyl. A lot of people think that cutting vinyl is similar to putting digital masters on a CD, but it's not, right? You have to cut forward. You have to process to the cutting, right?
Yes.
Can you explain how that works?
Sure. So back in the day when we just cut vinyl and there was no real digital format, it was vinyl or cassette, you would EQ your music to what you thought sounded good out of the speakers, and then when it came to transferring to disc, you would have to do some other EQ possibly to make it sound good on the disc. So you would do test cuts and listen back with a stylus. You were cutting on one side and a stylus was playing back on the other, and you would listen to, see, does that sound right on the vinyl? There's also things, the outside of the record spins faster than the inside, so the inside record needs more high end. So as you would go in, you would gradually add high end to the record, and that was just for vinyl.
I've heard people saying like they choose to put their singles on the outside of at one side, right?
Because it's faster, so the groove is cleaner. You can get better level and better sound on the outside. Primarily, back in the day, the singles of each record were either one and two, sometimes three, and the same thing on the B side. The first song on the B side would be another possible single because it sounded better out there. And it was also like, you'd play the record, then turn it over, and to get the audience back into it, you'd kind of put another single. So it'd be like, yeah. And then maybe every now and then they would put a really good one at the end just to, get your play through. Yeah.
That's the battle between Lennon and McCartney.
Yeah.
So back to digital mastering. I saw you were trying Ozone 11. Do you like it?
Yes. I really like Ozone 11. They've added a bunch of new features that I think they really had, modern music in mind when they developed them, and it's kind of nice. There's a couple things, it's brand new. I'm still poking around through it, but I've kind of tapped into a couple cool things in there, and it's working out,
You're in the box for the most part these days, right? So when you first start working in the box, what were the processes that you find hard to replicate in the box?
So, more than half of my career was probably in the analog realm, so I just got used to working off of tape or digital, but through analog EQs. And analog EQs, it's very different than digital in the sense that when you turn the knob, it's all by feel. There's a lot of the stuff wasn't detented, or you would just be very it wasn't exact. In digital, everything is exact, so it's a little different. That not being exact part was what kind of made analog cool, is that you would get, a once-in-a-lifetime sound. At the moment, the temperature of the gear, the electricity flowing at the time, there was a bunch of different variables. It was much harder to recall stuff. It was much slower process in working. It was harder to A/B stuff, where today in the box, I can literally set up one song with maybe 3 different EQs and limiter sets and just A/B through them and say like, okay, which one really has the right vibe and sound that I want to like give the client.
Yeah, you talked about, yeah, you just mentioned you would audition different EQs or limiters. So what are some limiters you like to use?
Well, the maximizer and the ozone,
Ozone.
I really like. It's one of my main limiters. The Fab filter, Pro Alto.
Do you have a favorite mode in those?
I like transient is really nice. Sometimes modern works. It depends. The limiters, when they kind of don't work, that's when I kind of change the
Yeah,
mode.
what do you listen for when you choose limiters?
The most natural sound, the sound that kind of like opens the record up or gives it movement to me. A lot of times today I get a mix and then I get a reference mix which is smashed. And I want to try and make it as loud but much more movement in it, not so much, not so much limitations on the range of it. So I try and redo it but with more space around it, more movement.
So when you get a super loud reference mix to the point where it's basically unhealthy levels like -4, -3, do you still try to chase the levels, or do you try to talk to the artist, the label?
So this is like the question of life right now. I try and match if I can, but sometimes the reference is just so harsh and horrible sounding to me in this room that I will just give them a version of what I think sounds better. Sometimes they're like, hey, that sounds great, but can you make it as loud? And, then I get pushed into that corner. But my thing with the loudness is there's no record of sales being increased by louder records. So that's off the table. So then there's the whole thing with like, well, in the playlist, if my song's louder, it sounds better. There's really there's no information on that being true. If your song is crushed and distorted and lifeless, to me, that's something that I'll listen to and be like, wow, like, why is it like that? I think people have stepped away from vibe and like feeling of music and they just worry about luffs. And I really wish people would get back into making a record that had like feeling. Like when you play it, you automatically, like you turn your head like, ooh, what's that? Like you get goosebumps from it. That's what music is about to me, is goosebumps and feelings,
Yeah, totally. So most digital music streaming platforms have level normalizations these days. So do you take that into considerations when you set the levels of each master?
I like to shoot for that level. Like I like to give the client something that's loud but won't get destroyed in the noise, the level change. But it's very hard to convince somebody. If somebody comes in here and they give me a ref that's -3, it's going to be very hard to convince them to like lower it and not, worry about that. I find myself today more often turning records down. Like Friday night, if I'm driving somewhere, or Saturday, if I'm driving around, I'll listen to new music Friday. And it used to be like, okay, I have to turn this one song up. Now I find that I'm turning a bunch of songs down because I'm listening to the playlist and all of a sudden they're blasting. I'm listening in the car, I'm pumping it a little bit, I'm trying to feel it. And then all of a sudden some songs come on and it's like, whoa, that's like, I can't drive at that level, so.
Have you found certain markets like say Asia or America have tend to ask for louder masters?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like, way back when I started, I was basically just doing American music or maybe some British music. Maybe some artists were, sending stuff to me by, mailing tapes and files. And ever since we switched to, email and digital and files being sent, we've kind of gone global. It's almost been 15 years now that I'm doing music from all over the world, 20 years. And since that's happened, now I feel like more, different genres of music in other countries have almost chase the loudness thing. Like, oh, we have to be as loud as, American rap music. We have to be as loud as American rock music. And I've noticed that, like, K-pop music was always competitive, but now K-pop music is almost like, like it's the thing to be as loud as K-pop music. And I've seen it happen with Chinese, pop music, is that, while I feel like Chinese pop music is like really good right now, there's like some really good artists, really good production, really good records, that they're also chasing that loudness thing. And it's, I hope that it comes back. Latin music, for years, Latin music was about vibe. It was about color. It was about movement and everything. And now I feel like a lot of Latin music is like, okay, let's just make it loud and put it on New Music Friday and it's banging and whatever. But also I feel like a lot of, when reggaeton started, that was Latin rap, and there was rap music in Latin countries, but it wasn't what the new music is now, So I just feel like that whole thing has changed and it's gotten better, but I feel like, again, they're chasing this loudness war.
Yeah, I think in a way these markets are mirroring what American, US are doing, but like 10 years or 15 years delayed.
Yeah. I mean, they're all, like everybody is a little delayed, but at the same time, it's like I wish they would see the outcome. Like you can see into the future if you're that far behind, but you're not. They're still like make it loud, and do all this. Like when CDs first came out, they were very limited to the level that you could put on a CD. And then a couple of people like myself and Tom Coyne, who used to be a partner here, we figured out how to make music on CDs really loud. By wrapping it and capturing it and, squashing it and capturing it. And it was good for business. It was good for rap music. And now I feel like everybody needs to like just lower it and go back to more, like automatically I get good sounding records that like I play the files and they sound really good. And then I listen to the refs that, the mixer made to make the client happy, and they're just crushed. And it's not the same vibe. It's not anything the same.
Do you usually ask for an unlimited mix to work on, or do you?
Always.
Always.
I mean, the problem today, though, also with that is that the mixer does a mix, and it might be like minus 14, minus 10 peaks on a Lux meter, maybe even lower, and then the reference is minus 4, and the correlation between the two mixes is, it's like two different things, because the mixer put 4 plugins or 3 plugins or on the bus, and the client and everybody's only heard the ref. They've never heard the mix, and the mix has nothing to do with it. So I get the mix, and I realize now I have to put all this stuff on the mix to make it sound like the ref or be close to the ref, and sometimes it's just like, it's a little heavy-handed on the mix, on the ref. So they're like, yeah, the mastering engineer will fix it later, and he'll make it just as loud and not distorted. And, there's a reason why that mix was loud and distorted, and it's possibly the same thing when I get it, like I can't make it that clean and that loud.
So in the sessions you showed in the Mix with the Masters class, most of the mastering you did, simple is the wrong word, but it's not like difficult, or it's not complicated. Like mostly broad strokes and light touches. Is that most of the time?
That's the way, like when I started in the business, I was very heavy-handed because I had to put my mark on everything, and I had to like, change the music, and I I had to do all these things I felt in my head were necessary. And then as my career went on, I realized that, I'm starting to work with bigger mixers, better art, from better studios. Everything was getting better, and I realized that what they sent me was what they thought was perfect. So instead of me dissecting it and ripping it apart, I would just kind of polish it up and fix it up. Like I used to be like, 75% me on a master, and then I realized now some of the best records I've ever worked on was like 20% or 10%. And people say, well, you're not doing that much to it, but I feel like I'm doing enough to it to make it sound great and not, take away from the original mix, the original thought of what was going on.
It's what you not do, right?
Yeah, sometimes, I mean, a famous mixer, Serban Gehringer, told me one time that, he goes, I like you because you don't really mess up my stuff. I do just enough to it to make it sound right to him, and then That's it, you know.
But there must be some tracks that need some heavy-handed work, right?
No, there's a lot of my day is heavy-handed work. You know, if I do like one big artist, you know, I work with Florence and the Machine or Dua Lipa or, you know, One Republic, and then those records become popular and everybody's like, oh, I want that sound. So they come to me. Now, you know, you're working with, you know, Serban, Manny, Josh Goodwin, you know, Tony Maserati. You're working with all these guys that are big mixers and they're working with big artists. And, you know, then these other clients that come in are working with their cousin's friend who has a studio in his bedroom and he's pretty good at mixing. And I now have to take that project and make it sound like, you know, Florence and the Machine or One Republic or, you know, Wu-Tang or whatever. So it's not the same, like I get given the same task, but it's not the same, you know, material. So I have to work a little harder to do that.
Dua Lipa is a pretty popular reference these days, right?
Yeah, for decades it was Rihanna for me that, oh, you know, I did all the Rihanna stuff. Now in the modern day it's more, you know, like Dua Lipa and, you know, things like that, you know. You know, I feel like too a lot of times when people come in and they say, oh, I want to work with you because of, you know, this record, in their mind, their record is equivalent to One Republic or Dua Lipa or, you know, whoever the artist that's in their head, Rihanna. So they think because I'm doing it now, I'm going to make it sound like that when they don't understand there's like, you know, production and maybe Dua Lipa's voice or Rihanna's voice or, you know, like those type of things, the songwriters, the producers, you know. But I still have to put all, you know, my energy into bringing that out without all those other factors.
So here comes another philosophical question. What does a mastering engineer do? So some people think mastering just make it loud.
Yeah.
So, but we have certainly other mastering engineers who would do more work to a track. So what do you think mastering in today's music industry do for a project or for an artist?
So in today's world, it's a third person's view, a third person's listen, you know, in a controlled environment that is time tested and quality tested and you know, people who, you know, peer tested by getting reactions from other people of the sound of your room. And it's taking that information and doing what's necessary to make the song sound better or more controlled or, you know, moving it into a different space, you know, enhancing it, and then bouncing it off the people that it came from and seeing if they are in agreement with what I do. Mastering originally started with cutting vinyl. You know, you were the guy who transferred the reel-to-reels to the disc. And slowly it was kind of like, oh, let me transfer it, but put an EQ on it. Or maybe balance the levels or put some limiting on it now. And then when the digital world came in, CDs, it was transferring all that stuff to the CD and making it sound as big as possible in the new digital world. Now that we're in streaming, and I think the audiences are a little different today. Like, you know, artists aren't so concerned about an album sound, where I still think, like, when you make an album, it should sound like an album. Everything should be balanced and like a journey, and you can listen to it, and it all comes together as one piece. I think a lot of generation today in the business look at everything as individual tracks. So it's putting together, you know, it's maximizing each song and then kind of putting it together, you know,
The
in
generation
a
of
different way.
playlists.
Yeah, it's more about playlists. Like when people give me singles, they're like, this is what I'm thinking, this kind of playlist. So then I work on it then, and then the next song comes out and they're like, this is the next playlist. So it's a little more random in my thought process or whatever, but again, you know, mastering engineers have adapted to everything over the, you know, the centuries.
Have you had requests that say it's an album, but make each song sound the best on its own?
Yeah, I've done records where, you know, one song's really loud and then the next song is not as loud, and there's reasons for that to the artist or the producers. To me, I like a more balanced. Like I said, I'm older. I like you know, like an album sound. I used to go home and play albums, you know, after work and, you know, listen to the whole thing through. People today don't really, you know, people aren't as album oriented as, you know, I was. So I have to take into consideration. People are just going to listen to this song by this artist and then this song. Playlist, you know, it's all playlists. So you kind of try and put it together. It's very hard to, you know, perceive what a playlist is going to sound like, but you know, people will give you a list of what they want, and then I'll like go through my phone and play it against their songs. The dance guys and the electronic guys have literally been like outside of the business when it comes to that. The like club guys, like when I started, I was cutting a lot of 12-inch vinyl for clubs, and as time went on, when it turned into like digital world and streaming, the music, the DJs and everything were like, we don't need mastering. It's perfect as it is. I'm taking all mastered stuff anyway and putting it together. And it's like, okay, but it's so random when you listen to that stuff. Like some stuff is just pinning level. Yeah. Some stuff is lower and moody. So it's crazy.
For sure. Yeah.
To me, the request of like super loud dance tracks doesn't make sense because you need the movement to feel the groove to dance, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Like when I used to cut dance records, it was all about like the bass and the top end being separate and really moving your thoughts and like you were on the dance floor feeling the stuff, like the bass had to be right. And, it was like, the loudness war started in the club because the DJs could only turn their volume to 10. Yeah. So the louder the disc you cut, the louder it played in the club. So I get that part. But then as all that stuff went away and digital came in, it wasn't necessary anymore. It just wasn't like, people could assemble digital playlists and do things together, and you could balance the stuff out. It was like making a cassette back in the day. You make a mixtape and you'd balance out the levels, you would look at your meters, and you made a playlist that was all different songs, but it was all balanced. That's what mastering, like that's why I feel like I got into mastering, because when I was young I made playlists on cassettes,
So you mentioned you use view meters to gauge a level, gauge level on a song, right? So view meters doesn't only shows the momentary loudness, like the loudness at the moment. So it doesn't really show like the loudness on the whole program or a whole song or a whole album, right? So do you integrate loudness? Do you think that reading is important for a song or an album?
Yes and no. It's hard to say. Like, to me, the VU meters show something the LUF meters don't. That's why I have the two different meters. I have them on both sides too. So the LUF meter tells me what everybody's going to perceive the level as, and like the technical guys who are like, I need it to be this level because the playlist that I'm on, everything's at this level. But the VU meter is for the person who's like, like more about the feeling and the vibe. Like I know what the bass is kicking at. I know, how fast it's moving. I can see the movement in the meters. It's just something that I've taught myself over, 40 years, how to look at VU meters and how to know what they're saying to me.
I think that really makes sense you can see dynamics in a song on the VU meter.
Yes. You can see them on a scope too. You just have to learn how to read it,
True.
I just feel like today everybody's just looking at the numbers. And not the, if you look at a number, it's going to give you a value of whatever you want it to be. Like you can raise it and lower it to get that value, but look at what's happening audibly, listen to what's happening audibly. Look at VU meters. Are they just like pinned or whatever? Because that's going to affect other systems too. If you like this system in this room is best as it can get. The average home system is not going to be able to handle a lot of level and things like that, So it's also people listening in headphones now. There's a whole bunch of different things going on.
Do you tend to choose limiters with true peak limiting, or do you like choose between true peak or non-true peak?
That's a crazy question. My assistant would love to answer that. My assistant likes when I use true peak because all the levels are capped and everything, and he doesn't have to worry about, post-production changing stuff. Sometimes I really like the sound of the limiter with no peak limiting on it. It depends on the material. Literally every time I work on a song, I literally, I just click everything. Like, does it sound better like this? Does it sound better like that? Try this, try this. Like I'll set up a session and I'll put my channel strip on it of what I use. And then each song I'll kind of be like, if the songs all have the same vibe, I don't do as much clicking. But if it's different, if it's, 13 songs by 13 different mix engineers and producers, it's taken me a while to like go through everything for each song. So.
Okay, so last question. So you mentioned you like to create movement in a song? How do you usually do that?
That's the secret. I mean, it's, you know, it's carving into the song till you can get, like, I think a lot of times I hear songs that are really good, but I would just like to feel the bass more. I'd like to, I'd like to feel the kick drum more. I'd like to like feel the snare, or like the snare is in a different place. It's just, it's trying to reshape the stuff, or enhance. A lot of times, today is more enhancement, is just going in and finding those little notches and those, either put it up or put it down, and, just find where the magic happens. Literally,
To find the essence of a song, right?
I sweep. I did a session one time with these clients, and they were like, "What are you doing?" And I was just, each song I put up, I just swept the EQ back and forth, and they're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm waiting till I feel something. I'm waiting till I hear something." If I just, like, some people come in there like, "I think you should boost 215 hertz at half a dB," and I'm like, that is like crazy to me, because like, how do you know like that's the thing? And I'm like, let's sweep that area. Then it's like, okay, it was 180 or it's 320, or like, you have to feel it, you have to move it around. Every EQ reacts different too. It's not just like, it's not something that you do in your home studio, or your studio might not translate here the same way. So you have to be open to like sweeping and trying things.
So the only analog pieces you have, what do you like about the curve bender?
It's just different. It's like it has a different shape, it has a different color. That's why most of my EQs are like drastically different, because, in the digital world, all the EQs basically sound the same flat. In the analog world, just putting it in line can change something about it. So they each have, all three of those have really different color to them. And that's, sometimes I'm searching for that extra color. Sometimes I get mixes that are just like flat and like kind of like they just need like some subtle movement, or like
Excitement.
Electronics, like things like that going through it that kind of shape things and move things around.
Okay, Chris, this has been great. I really appreciate this. Thank you very much. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, no.
So this is gonna go up to our Bilibili channel, hopefully in October. So we're gonna send you the video when it comes out.
All right.
All right. Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, anytime. Thank you.